Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Personator World. Don't just know your customer, trust your customer. My name is Liz Freyer, and I'm with Melissa here in Rancho Santa Margarita, California. And I'm joined today by Kevin Ube, who is going to show you how to prevent fraud and achieve compliance without skipping a beat in customer satisfaction with Personator World, our real-time ID verification solution. So first, I just have a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. If you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to type those in the chat box and we'll get to as many questions as we can towards the end of the presentation. Also, as a reminder, I will be sending out a recording of today's presentation, so take a look or keep an eye out for that tomorrow. And I think that's all I have, so I'm going to go ahead and get started and turn it over to Kevin. Kevin?
Thank you, Liz. My name's Kevin. I'm a sales engineer here at Melissa. I'll be going through this webinar today. So I want to start off by talking a little bit about who we are. Melissa is a leading provider of data quality solutions since 1985, and we have provided more than 10,000 companies APIs, web services, and tools, which allow these companies to verify, standardize, enrich, and consolidate their global contact data. In this webinar, we're going to be going through a lot of things. You can see here in our agenda. First, we're going to start off by talking about electronic ID verification, why it's important, and how it affects the customer onboarding process. Next, we're going to talk about what type of data sources we can trust when we're doing this electronic ID verification. Third, knowing your customer is just one thing, but what we offer is a comprehensive ID verification solution that allows you to trust your customer. And fourth, we're going to have this demo of our solution, Personator World, which is our comprehensive ID verification web service. This is a demo like you will not want to miss. It'll explain and show how all these things that we're going to be talking about in this webinar come together. So to start off, what is electronic ID verification? Electronic ID verification is basically using the information from trusted data sources to verify and identify an individual based on their personal information, such as their name, their date of birth, address, and national ID. And this is done all in real time, and real time is important when you want to have a process that automatically verifies the customer's identity and helps improve and speed up the process of onboarding. So why use electronic ID verification? Well, in this next slide, we're going to be taking a look at some of the things we found for some of our companies and clients. So starting off here, 62% of companies are victims of payment fraud. Another thing we found out was 3.5 trillion in revenue were lost due to financial crimes last year. And here, there was a 40% increase in card not present fraud last year. So all these problems could have been solved if we had some sort of process that had identity verification to prevent these types of fraud that you're seeing up here. So again, electronic ID verification helps protect businesses against fraud and money laundering. This electronic ID verification is important for processes such as knowing your customer. This is basically verifying a customer is saying who they are. And then with a solution like this, you can also avoid doing business with risky customers. So when you use the solution, you'll be able to see like what types of risk are associated with this customer or individual. And with electronic ID verification, you're achieving entity resolution and compliance. And this is needed for various areas such as Anti-Money Laundering and Bank Secrecy Act, which require electronic ID verification as part of the first process in verifying the identity of your customer. And then we can also see this solution will help with politically exposed persons when we do screening. And electronic ID verification allows seamless customer onboarding. So with electronic ID verification, you're basically verifying a person electronically, and this helps deliver on customers' expectations for convenience, speed, and simplicity. So this helps increase efficiency when you need to do approvals and do checkouts with certain types of transactions. Electronic ID verification is very helpful because it's in real time. So for electronic ID verification, what type of data sources can we trust? So we work with in-country data providers and data sources. Up here on the slide, we're seeing a list of what type of data sources we use. You can see here, we have citizen national databases, we have credit agency, Brew data, we have national ID databases, we have data from utility and telco companies, we have driver licenses, electoral rolls, and we have country-specific proprietary sources. So these types of data sources form the basis on how we can do electronic ID verification. So electronic ID verification, that's what we've been talking about, and that helps with knowing your customer. But knowing your customer is just one thing. What about trusting your customer? And then what we're going to be talking about is our comprehensive ID verification solution. So to talk about what is comprehensive identity verification, and this basically is combining electronic ID verification, which is what we've been talking about in the past few slides, taking that and combining that with dynamic knowledge-based authentication for the phones and emails, which leads to a comprehensive solution to affirm a consumer is really who they are. So this brings us to our solution, Personator World, as a web service. This is our comprehensive ID verification solution. And you can see in this graphic, we're dealing with a lot of different types of data elements and list here. So you can see here the addresses, phones, date of birth, email, national ID. They're being fed into Personator World. And then we could also do watch list screening and also PEP checks. So PEP is for politically exposed persons. So to start off on comprehensive ID verification solution, let's first take a look at contact data validation. So in a contact, you have a name, address, phone, and email. Starting off with the name and address, what we can do is confirm the person's presence at an address and verify. So for example, if you want to know if a person actually lives at that address, we can confirm that. In addition to that, we can also verify that an address is deliverable. So we're using postal reference data to make sure that the address exists and is deliverable too. We can also standardize addresses according to USPS, Canada Post, and also other international specifications for 240 plus countries and territories. And we can perform aggressive address correction to fix data entry errors and omissions. So then for the phone verification, what we can do is check if a phone number is active and callable. And this is done in real time. So we're doing a real-time check to make sure that that phone number is still active. We also support global caller ID. So this returns back the name associated with the phone number. And this helps us indicate that the person owns that phone number. And then the third thing here is we can determine the line type. So we can tell you if the phone number is residential, business, or voice over IP. And this could be useful if you want to know, for example, if this person's calling from, for example, if someone's calling from voice over IP, that may be, you could use that as an indicator that may be a bit more risk than a residential or business landline. For email verification, we can check if the email mailbox exists. And we use our own technology to verify if the mailbox exists. We can do a lookup and update the domain. So this helps when you pass an email address that has the wrong domain. We can correct the domain. And adding on that, we also correct typographical errors, which prevent successful sending. So then we're going to talk about identity verification. Starting off with age, we could quickly confirm a person's age by checking their date of birth. So when you use Personator World, you can pass in a date of birth to confirm, and by using the date of birth, you confirm their age. So this helps prevent, from onboarding customers who are not of a certain age, or selling services or products to customers not of a certain age. We can also verify the national ID. So, like for example, here in the U.S., it'd be a social security number, driver's license. Other countries have their own form of the national ID, and basically with the national ID, we can take that and then match it against the name and address, and that can be used to further improve or give more confidence to a person, indicating more confidence in that this person is really who they are. So the thing we're going to talk about here is the watch list and the PEP screening. Basically, with our web service, you can screen your customers against watch list and PEP list, and this helps achieve better compliance by determining risk during screening. You can screen individuals against multiple international lists using our Personator World web service. And up here, we got listed the OFAC, the EU Consolidated Financial Sanctions List, and we also got various PEP lists, such as like the CIA World Leaders List, which are incorporated in our database. These lists are some of the things that we've incorporated in here, but Melissa is continually adding more watch lists and more sanction sources. And outside of Personator World, we also have more technologies and web services that can be stacked in with Personator World to give more intelligence regarding location and consumer insight. So we have a service called IP Locator, and you use this to get geolocation info associated with an IP address. So given an IP address, you can figure out the state, city, country, the ISP, the connection speed, and type. So this is the internet information about the internet service provider associated with the IP address. And then you also get like time zone and postal code information. So using something like IP Locator would be useful. For example, if you have like a website and you're collecting IP addresses of your clients, one of the things you could do is use IP Locator to get some geography information based on that IP address. So when they're using their website, if they provide like an address or basically if they provide an address that differs from the geo information associated with the IP address, for example, if they provide an address in the US, but they have like an IP address located in China, that should raise up a flag for you. So that could be used as a way to learn more about the customer and figure out the risk associated with this customer based on their IP address. And then we also can provide more customer insight, and this is done through data appends. We have consumer demographics data. Basically, we could turn back hundreds of detailed elements about an individual, such as their marital status and household income. This type of data would be useful if you want to learn more about this individual, such as like what type of lifestyle, what occupation they're using. We also return back business firmographics information. So this includes like the SIC, the NAICS codes, the industry codes. We could turn back information such as the sales estimate, sales revenue. In addition to that, we could also verify if a business exists at this address. So if you want to know if this business is still in good standing, you can use our business data to verify if this company or business still exists at that location. And then we have also contact data appends. This is primarily for the North America region. So what we can do here is fill in missing gaps in your contact data. So for example, if you had a name or an address, we could add in the phone and email to that contact, thus completing the contact. So initially, if you just had like the name and address, and then you had the email and phone appended, this gives you another way or avenue of contacting and reaching out to this customer. So going back to Personator World, one of the things I want to emphasize is that it's global and it's convenient. Here on the slide is the global coverage for Personator World. And you can see here on the left-hand side is the list of countries that we have currently supported. We have a couple dozen currently supported for Personator World. So these are the countries we can currently do identity verification in. And then on the right-hand side, you can see here the upcoming countries that are coming into Personator World, and we will be able to do identity verification in there as well. So again, Personator World is convenient and it's a web service. So Personator World provides a single, simple, and easy to use API for verifying and screening your customers. This web service uses a TLS encrypted endpoint, so that means that this web service is highly secure. When you're sending in personal information through this web service, you want to make sure no one's snooping in there and intercepting details about individuals that you're verifying. And then we also provide redundancy and distributed server farms across the globe. So this makes the web service very reliable. It keeps the web service uptimes up there, very extremely high. And then this web service allows RESTful GET requests as well as POST with JSON. So for developers out there listening on the webinar, they'll like to hear this. So that means that this web service is easy to integrate in and as a web service. And what I'm going to do now is go through a demo of the Personator World. Okay, so I'm just moving this window over here. But basically what we have up here is a little web app built using the Personator World web service. So in this web app, what we can do is provide, it has on the right-hand side here, we have fields here. We can enter in a national ID, the name. We can type in date of birth, phone number, email. You got the address here. So you can see here, Personator World allows up to 8 address lines to accommodate the various mailing address formats. We can also provide a city, administrative area, and postal code in here as well. So that's the form here. That's the fields. That's the type of data you can enter in, send through Personator World. Another thing I want to touch on is the actions here. So as I mentioned in slides, Personator World is a single API that does verification and screening. And how that's controlled is by these actions here, which can be turned on and off within Personator World. So you have check, verify, and screen. And basically check, that's when you want to standardize, parse, and correct your input data. So when we're taking a look at names, addresses, phones, and emails, starting off with addresses, we're formatting the address, making sure it's in the correct format, and checking if it's actually a deliverable address. For the emails, we're doing a real-time check to see if that email address actually exists. And for the phone numbers, we're doing a check to see if that phone number is in proper format, if that phone number is still active and it's callable. So check forms the foundation of our comprehensive ID verification solution. So if you wanted, and during check, you could do the caller ID as part of the phone checking. For the emails, real-time mailbox check, that's part of the check action. And then the email for the addresses, that's for checking if the address is deliverable. And then the verify action down here, that's when you want to do the identity verification. You can turn on that action. So that's when we use the trusted reference data sources that we talked about in the slides. And then we take a look at your data and see how they match against those data sources. And then here we have the screen action. So this is if you want to check the individual against multiple types of watch list or PEP or other sanctions list. You could select the screen action, and then Personator World would check the input person in the input against those watch lists. And then these actions could be turned on individually. So if you need if you have a process that needs to screen a person or individuals repeatedly, you could just have the screen action turned on, and it will do the check against the watch list and the PEP list. So starting off with the checking, if I just run this record through, so you see here I already have a guy in Australia entered in this application. If I wanted to check their name, phone, email, and address, how it works in Personator World. So you see here we get the JSON response back. But basically, it's a bit technical, but basically what you see here is these different sections here. So starting off with the name, you can see we parse out the name. We could do some genderization based on the name. This is basically using statistical data on common first names to do the genderization. And then you also see the results for address. One thing I want to talk about is the result codes. So when you use this web service, it returns back result codes. And the result codes they look scary, but they're pretty much very important because it allows the result codes will tell you like how good the data is or what's wrong with the data if there's an issue with it. These types of different result codes, their meanings can be found on our wiki page. But basically, the result codes are useful. So if you want to build like an application that looks for certain types of result codes, the result codes will tell you like what type of changes were made or how good the address is, and then based on these result codes, you can determine how you want to proceed on using the data. You can see here for the address, we do the formatting of the address, we standardize it. So you can see here, it returns back the formatted address in a single field, but you also get the address lines showing the address lines that you can put on a mailing label. You also do parsing of the address as well, so you can see that the Personator World is also breaking up the address. And then the result codes will tell you if the address exists, how good the address is, and whether this address is deliverable. For the emails, we're also doing a check on the email. So here you can see it's doing parsing of the email address. The result codes will tell you how good the email address is. And then there's also a date checked here to tell you when this email address has been checked in real time. For the phone number, we also turn back result codes as well. So this will tell you if the phone number is active and dialable. You can see here we also turn back information such as the carrier and caller ID. So again, here with the phone, just using the check action, what we're learning here already is the name of the individual using the caller ID on the phone number. And then you also see here, we're also parsing out the phone number and we're also turning back like geographic information associated with that phone number. So that's part of checking. It's going through the names, addresses, phones, and emails. If I turn on the verify action, and then let's run this record through. So the name and address, phone and email, they're pretty much the same. But what you see down here in the identity section is what's now being returned now that the verify action is turned on. So identity section has got its own result codes, and basically these KV result codes are telling you how your data matched. And this is for overall. And then you see down here, we give back a confidence field. So the possible values for confidence are low, medium, and high. High confidence records, those are records that you can trust with very high confidence. This is a very reliable record. Medium confidence records, those suggest that you need to go back and take a bit more look into this customer, try to get more details about this customer. And then the low confidence records, those type of records haven't been able to, that means that we haven't been able to match that very well against our data sources. And those type of records, you should probably discard them or review them later. But basically here you see in data sources, what this web service is doing is returning back a list of data sources being used to verify this individual. So we talked about the trusted data sources that we've been using in Personator World. Basically, this data sources field is returning back an array of data sources, and you can see like how the input data matched against these particular data sources. So like, for example, if you take a look at this first data source here, you see this credit type of data source was used. And on this particular credit source, we were able to only match on the last name. Another credit source. So you see here, the different types of credit sources are being indicated by their numbers with there. But you see in this particular, another credit source, you're able to verify the last name and the city or the locality. Another credit source, you're able to verify on the last name. Another credit source. Yeah, so you see there's a lot of credit sources being used here. But then you see another type of data source here, a consumer data source. In this case, it's able to find a match on the address. And then we could break down like how the address matched. So you see here in the next set of result codes will tell you the house number matched, the street or thoroughfare matched, locality matched, city matched, and the postal code matched. And basically, having all these data sources being listed out and showing like how they're being matched against. This could be very useful in some situations, like for particular, there are some AML and KYC processes that need like 2x2 identity verification. So 2x2 basically is two different types of elements matching on two different types of data sources. And then you can see here with something like this, we're displaying the data sources and listing out how each data source matched with the input data. You can check if a record matches past a 2x2 identity verification check. So that's Personator World. It's a very simple to use web service, and you can see in the output is returning back JSON. Yeah, and you can see here in this sample application, it's running in the web browser. So this makes this web service very easy to integrate into like web forms or web applications. And that's pretty much it for the Personator World demo. So what did we learn today? So today we talked about electronic ID verification, and that's the important step in the know your customer process. So electronic ID verification helps protect against fraud and money laundering and achieve compliance. And as we mentioned in slides, like the AML and the Bank Secrecy Act, they require electronic ID verification. And then what we also learned today as well is Personator World, which is our comprehensive ID verification that you can use to help trust your customers. So electronic ID verification was basically, we were using trusted reference data sources to verify the identity of an individual. But then our solution, Personator World, builds on that and takes it to the next level by doing contact data validation. So you can see there, we also do like phone checks, caller ID, make sure the phone number is dialable, emails, verifying in real time that email address exists. Addresses, we're making sure that the address exists, is deliverable, that someone's not giving you a fake address. And then we also talked about our other solutions that we stacked with Personator World that can provide consumer and business enrichments to give you better insight, as well as our IP locator service that could help you, that you could also stack on to Personator World to give you more location intelligence about an IP address, which is very useful for like online applications and online websites and forums where you could get the IP address, get the geolocation info associated with the IP address, and then use that with Personator World to verify their identity. All right.
Oh, thanks, Kevin. Okay, so we already have some questions going on or coming in, so we'll just get right to it. If you have any questions, please feel free to type them in the chat box. So first question is from Peter. Can you verify legal entities?
So that's a good question. The type of data that we have right now is focused more on the individual and consumer. So at the moment right now, we can verify individuals. Companies is something we're looking into, but at the moment right now, no.
Okay, we have another question. Do you log and store our information when we use Personator World?
Yeah, that's a good question as well. So when you use Personator World, we're not logging the contents of the data or in the request that you're sending through the web service. So the only things we keep track of is like the usage, and that's just for like login purposes. But as regarding the data itself, we don't log the names, phones, emails, and addresses, national ID. We don't log any personal identifiable information that you use through this web service.
Okay, looks like we have another question. Sam asked, what are the typical response times for Personator World?
I would say typical response times. I've been looking through our usage through the usage of Personator World. I would say that response times is under 5 seconds typically. So for most situations, you should expect a response time response within 5 seconds.
Great. Peter asked a follow-up question for the countries not listed in your global coverage. Is the check limited to the current Melissa address services?
Yeah, that's a good question. So for people out there who are familiar with what we do, as I mentioned in the beginning, we've been a long time data provider for names, phones, emails, and addresses. So the slide that I showed the countries, that's for the identity verification. So if you wanted to check a person's identity, that's that slide that's showing the list of countries is what we support at the moment. When you use the check action, we can still do a check on the address for 240 plus countries and territories. So we work with various data postal agencies around the world to help verify and standardize addresses. So you can still use this service to verify addresses if you wanted to.
Great. Does anyone else have any other questions? Don't be shy. Feel free to put those in the chat box now, and Kevin will be happy to answer them for you. Okay, we have another question from Peter. Can you verify passport numbers, driver's licenses, and government ID cards? And then also, is the result a true or false?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question as well. So right now at the moment, like you saw in the demo, we were able to verify the national ID. That's currently what's supported in the web service, but eventually we'll be able to have additional inputs for the passport numbers and another special field for the driver's license. Regarding like ID cards, we don't really do a document scan if that's what you're talking about. If you're hoping to like scan a picture of a card and then upload it to our service and have our service like verify the authenticity or how legitimate is the document. We don't do that. This is an electronic ID verification solution. So how this web service works is that you have to get the national ID, name, phone, email, and address from the individual. You have to field that, and then you build a request and send that through the Personator World web service. That service then will tell you via the result codes that you saw in the demo, like what pieces of your input data matched against those data sources.
Okay, we'll give it just a couple more seconds here or minutes here to answer any other questions you guys might have. And do keep in mind also, we are going to be sending out a recording of today's presentation. So if you guys missed anything, we will send you a copy of that. You can catch up. All right, well, that looks like all the questions we have. So if you think of any questions after today, feel free to email Kevin. He'd be happy to answer them for you. His email address is kevin@melissa.com, or you can give us a call at 1-800-635-4772. And thank you again for joining us today. I hope you guys all have a great day, and we'll see you again next time.